The board as a whole discussed asking for less, and we felt it irresponsible to ask for a less amount based on these projections that this will last us for the next 10 years. If we were to ask for less, in 6, 7 years, we'll be here in this same spot asking for more money again or making large cuts again. Basically what happens is we receive about 80% of our funding from the state, and the additional money comes from our taxpayers. And we are asking for a modest increase to maintain the level of excellence here at the Delano School.
The levy that we passed back in 2012 is not keeping up with inflation and the additional expenses that it's taking us to run our buildings and operate our school district. For people who don't understand why we even need an operating levy, it's essentially to complement the money that we get from the state, which is the majority of what we get to operate our building. Since about the early 1970s, I think, most school districts within the state of Minnesota have had to rely on operating levies simply just because the state funding isn't keeping up with the cost of education. So operating levies have become a pretty critical part of the revenue that we get for our school districts. And even though it's a small part overall, they're still really critically important. So the levy that we have in place right now is expiring. So we want to replace it with something that gives us a little bit more revenue to help us maintain the quality of education that our kids are getting in our buildings today.
The best case scenario is that we pass the levy this time, and then we're able to keep everything status quo, which works out for the district in a few different ways. It keeps the kids learning at the level we're at, but it also gives us the opportunity when we're looking to replace staff members to get good candidates. A district that's cutting, people don't want to come apply for jobs that they may not be able to keep for multiple years. And so it really does help to keep the quality of our teachers up. It allows us to have services that we have like paras, reading recovery services, all of that to stay at the level that we have, especially during COVID where those things are even more necessary than they were 3-4 years ago. I was totally on board with the schools don't need more money. They need to be more efficient with what they have, right until I got onto the school board and I started to understand how school finance works. When we went back and forth on the number and how much to ask for, it really came down to what is it that we need to keep the school where it's at right now. We thought about asking for a smaller number, but the reality is then we just have to continue deficit spending and come back to the community in 4 or 5 years and ask them to pass another levy. If we ask for what we need right now, the district should be able to remain stable for 10 years. We shouldn't have to go back out to the voters and ask for more. We should be able to continue doing the work that we're doing. And so that's kind of how we got to that number. It wasn't to add anything. It wasn't to make anything fancy or new. It was really just to maintain the status quo and do what we do. Delano traditionally has smaller class sizes of 22, 23, 24, especially at the lower levels. When you get to higher numbers, you see students struggle with behaviors and things like that.
Best case scenario, it passes and status quo. It means that we're able to continue the programming that we've got. We won't have to make any more cuts. And we're also hoping that based on the projections that we've got, that it lasts us the next 10 years, so we don't have to come back. It's super hard for school districts to forecast out 10 years because a lot of our funding is based on enrollment, and we just don't know what that looks like in 10 years from now. But we feel pretty strongly that based on the modeling that we've seen so far, that this is our best chance of being able to get the revenue that's going to last us for another 10 years. The purpose of us talking to you at this point is just to make sure that you're aware of all the facts and that when you go to those polls on November 2nd, that you have all the information that you need to keep our schools great.